Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I was detained this morning. I apologize to the couple of people that were here waiting at 9 a.m. Something occurred, and I had to deal with it. I hate being late. Punctuality is a sign of professionalism, and I hate being detained. But we're here now, and coincidentally, in a totally independent thing, there's a couple of technical things I'm trying out on this stream. Number one, I got a different camera. So I got a couple of cameras, and this is my awkward attempt to try and choose between them. I've also made some technical adjustments to the streaming software that I'm using, and I'm not a video streaming technical internet kind of guy, so I'm just hoping that it works. This is the trial. And I'm also using this on a PC that I built myself, because I used to enjoy doing that 13, 14 years ago, something like that. It was not exactly modern. So that presents certain complications. Anyway, welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. Today, we are talking about an interesting topic. It's about how to totally screw up your side hustle or full-blown business venture. And I believe the title was Startup CLUSTERWHOOPS, right? Because that's describing what this is. I have seen a lot of people royally screw up their entrepreneurial efforts. I've worked as a startup mentor to entrepreneurs. I was asked to do it several years ago. I did it for about 3 years, something like that. And it was really interesting. I got to meet some great people and, see a few people really succeed and really own it. And that was great. But unfortunately, as like many of you probably predicted, I saw a lot of things go wrong. A lot of people make very elementary rookie mistakes, and as well as some more sophisticated ones. But a lot of the rookie mistakes kind of were basically, you started to see the same things over and over and over again. They're very common. And that's what I want to talk about today. So whether you're doing a side hustle or you're jumping in with both feet and doing a full-blown startup or small business venture, you might find this interesting. The first thing I want to say is that this is primarily a Q&A, so if you have any questions or you want me to react to something, let me know in the chat. You should see the chat near my face. Let's see if I can talk into this microphone or this camera for a bit. You got a beautiful view of the garbage can, so your life has now been lived to its fullest. What was I going to say? Send me your questions. Now, while we're waiting for questions, I want to cover a couple of the basic blunders, the basic errors that a lot of people make, or it's a rookie mistake. And the first one is to think it's all about you. I've seen, I don't know how many startup founders make this mistake, and introverts, I think, are at a higher risk of falling into this mental trap, okay? And that is that you think it's all about you. You start off by thinking, what would I like to do? And I mean, this is a normal thing that everybody should ask themselves. You don't want to do something that you can't stand. You need to be able to tolerate and somewhat enjoy what you do. Okay, so fair enough. But beyond that, it's not all about you. Any kind of business venture is there to make money. And in order to make money, you have to serve a customer of some kind. So it's really about serving them. It's about knowing what they want. It's about caring about what they want. And before you can do any of that, you need to be aware of who they are and what they want. And I have seen many a technical entrepreneur, and usually introverts, they don't seem to recognize that that's kind of the reality. And they think it's all about them. What would I like to do? And they go on an adventure. God, I can't speak today. They go on an adventure, a journey to accomplish some personal goals of theirs, where they create something and they take it to completion and they offer it for sale. And it can be a great, valid technical accomplishment. Okay, they create a product or they engineer some kind of service, okay, whatever, which is great. And they do all the ego stuff. They put up a website. They go talk to customers. They title themselves as, founder, CEO, whatever. And they have the satisfaction of knowing that they have created something, some kind of product, It's a real feather in their cap. It's a real talking point for them. They feel a sense of accomplishment. It strokes their ego. And, maybe they even go so far as to get, like commercial space, like a rental space or a storefront or whatever. And this is all very satisfying to them, right? Unfortunately, the part of the equation that they missed was this product or service has to be created to solve a problem for somebody else. It's really about the somebody else. And that's the part that they haven't thought about, they know nothing about, they can't relate to, they have no personal connection to. And as a result, what they've done, when you think about it, really isn't any kind of business venture. Instead, it's either a creative venture or it's a foray into project management. Okay? That's what it is. Because business is about making money. You could take a creative hobby that you have, right? You do art, or you do coding, or you do whatever, and you create something. And that's totally fine. It's an entirely creative, voluntary thing. You're not having to serve anyone else. You're not having to consider anyone else. It's entirely for you, and that's great. The problem is once you want to turn it into a business venture of some kind, and the way it becomes a business venture is money comes into the equation. You have to now do it for profit, or at least to get some kind of revenue. You have to make sales of some kind. As soon as you're trying to do that, you're now in the world of business. Business is about money, and business is about serving customers. So unfortunately, this is a rookie mistake that I've seen a lot of people make. And what invariably happens is they put this thing out there and there's silence. There's a resounding thud. There's just nothing. No interest, no curiosity, nothing. No sales. And that's usually where it ends. If there's money involved, if it took sort of financing or any kind of capital to start it that you had to go outside of yourself to obtain, that becomes an even bigger problem. And that leads us to what I would term as cluster whoops number 2. Okay. And that is the same thing, only that you took a lot of financing. Okay. So you either borrowed money, you got loans, or you got grants, or it doesn't happen very often, at least not in the region of the world that I am, but you get investors, okay, either high net worth individuals or angel investors of some other kind, or you go into the big leagues and you deal with venture capital companies and all this kind of stuff. But the point is you took financing from somewhere. Usually you're not dealing with VCs if you're at this level. And then you go and do this. So you've just basically screwed yourself. You've borrowed a lot of money that essentially you can't pay back because it failed. That is cluster whoops number 2. Startup cluster whoops number 2. Do not take a lot of money. Do not take any money really to start up your startup venture. If you need a ton of money to do it, something is wrong. Okay. Now, people are going to give me an argument on this, and that's fine. I've heard them all. And whichever way you slice it, the arguments against it are wrong. Number 1, startup ventures are created to solve small problems. They're not created to solve big problems. You can't do what large companies can do or large organizations can do. You just can't. You don't have the resources. You're a tiny, nimble, very lean, very efficient, but very small venture. Okay, you can't take on huge problems. Okay, the example I always use is you can't start an airline from your garage. You just can't. You don't have the capital, you don't have the people, you don't have the resources, you don't have anything. You don't have the knowledge to do it. Even I don't care if you worked in the aerospace or airline industry for 20 years, you still can't do it. Okay? That's why the people that can solve those problems, the organizations that can't, are big, right? They employ hundreds, if not thousands of people. And they have millions, if not hundreds of millions of assets and liquidity a lot of times, to be able to do this kind of thing, right? If you're dealing with flying people around, I mean, you can't, that's not something you can do at a 1 or 2 person level, okay? Unless you happen to be a billionaire. And even then, it's really tough, right? Like people going to space like they have been doing recently. Richard Branson, hello. you're meant to solve small problems, okay? Small companies solve small problems. Big companies exist for a reason. They solve big problems, okay? You can't go head to head with big pharma operating out of your garage. You just can't, okay? Because they will always be able to outspend you, outmaneuver you, right? But that's okay, because you're not trying to do the same thing that they're trying to do. You're much more nimble. You can react and you can act much quicker. You can try original ideas, okay? You can try untested things. You can operate in small markets that, it doesn't make sense for them to operate in, but it could be a gold mine for you to operate in, right? Small companies exist to solve those problems, and they gain an advantage by doing that. Not going head to head, right? So the argument that you need a ton of startup capital, that doesn't fly, okay? The obvious counter argument that a lot of investors have to that kind of stuff is like, why are you trying to go head to head with them? They're like 100 times your size or 1,000 times your size. Why would anyone bet on you and not them? They outcompete you in every area. They've got more resources, they got more assets, they got more experience, they've got more connections. Like who are you to go in and try and go head to head with them and win? And usually that's where investors just leave, right? So small companies exist to solve small problems. So you don't need a lot of startup capital to begin with, okay? And even if you're trying to do something that traditionally would be considered reasonable, like, okay, I want to have my own restaurant, okay? Something like that. That's kind of on the bigger scale of what you could do on an individual level, right? But even something like that, it's possible to work your way up, okay? It isn't just nothing to restaurant. There's a lot of things in between, right? There's manufacturing food to be sold at stores. There's having some kind of concession stand, being able to sell food or food products individually at individual level. There's all kinds of variants of that are between nothing and having a restaurant, right? So there's all kinds of ways you could baby step it up to the restaurant thing, okay? The other big blunder, of course, is that, like, how can I put this? Just so you know, I'm a little bit flustered because of the unexpected, unscheduled thing I had to deal with right before I went live streaming here. So just bear with me. But this second issue is where you take out a lot of money, a lot of capital investment before you start your startup. The issue is that you then have one shot. Okay? Usually you get financing to be able to do one thing. Now, if that fails, it doesn't go according to plan. Usually it means you're out of capital, you're out of money. You can't just reorganize and try again. Usually you're done, okay? It's like saying, okay, we're going to play sudden death golf. Okay, that means you have to get a hole in one or you lose. You're done, right? Now, no sane person, I think, would ever take that challenge, right? If there was something really at stake. But yeah, that's what a lot of people do when they borrow a ton of financing, a ton of cash to go and create a product or a service, betting that it will take off and it will make enough money to not only recoup its costs, but then, result in further activity afterwards. And the problem is people in this situation, usually they're jumping blind. They've never actually been to that destination. So they're just guessing as to how you would get there. If they've guessed wrong and it doesn't work, they're done. And usually these days, in the last 10 years or so at least, the way a lot of financial services entities like banks and things that now have products for startups and small business, what they're doing is they're sort of making people sign a personal guarantee. So one way or another, you are responsible for paying them back, even if your idea flops. They'll give you the money, but they don't really believe in you. They don't care if it succeeds or fails. They're basically requiring you, you have to guarantee you're going to pay back the money, or at least 75% of it. That was the most common thing when I checked last 5 years ago, 75%. So that's not a great way to go. what I would term in technical terms as a cluster whoops. And that is a term that CEOs throw around very often. Hello to Sharon Liu says, what's the best way to make out whether the business makes sense? Sometimes people might think they are solving some kind of problems, but it just turns out not right. Excellent question. Excellent question, Sharon. You are on the ball. Okay? These are the types of questions that would-be entrepreneurs and people with side hustles should be asking. Okay? A lot of them don't. That coincidentally kind of brings me to the third thing I had lined up as an example of what I would call a cluster whoops for this situation. That is, how can I put this? I have worked with and I've observed, because I've been to a lot of pitch competitions and things like this as a judge, and I've heard a lot of students pitch all kinds of stuff. And a common issue is that they're pitching something. They're saying, okay, this is my idea, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how it's going to make money. The problem is that whatever industry that is, whatever business that is, okay, they themselves are outside of it. They've never been in it. They've never seen that business from the inside. They don't have any experience with it. Like, for example, let's pretend, okay, that you worked at, I don't know, a construction company. You build houses. I'm just going with a very common example here. And I don't know, let's say you had some skills in the skill trades. Maybe you knew how to do wooden framing for houses. You were a framer, okay? So that means you've done framing. You've worked in that business. You've had networking connections with some of the players in the construction industry in your location. You've done work for maybe the builders, the people that build houses and sell them to homeowners, okay? So you know a little bit about the business, okay? You kind of know the practices of how it tends to work. You know who are the players in that business. If you had a question about a specific aspect of that business, you would probably, if you didn't know the answer yourself, you'd be able to know exactly who would be able to give you the answer to that question, and you'd be able to go and call them and get that information relatively quickly and easily, okay? Because you've been on the inside of that business, okay? So let's say you then wanted to start your own business, I don't know, beyond framing, you wanted to, I don't know, become your own builder. You want to upgrade from selling your services as a framer instead to having your own business selling houses. You do the whole meal deal. You hire all the other subcontractors. You get the plots of land from the, I think it's the developers, and then you sell it to homeowners. Like, you want to do that, right? Well, you'd probably stand a higher chance of success of being able to do that than someone who's never been in the construction business, because you're already on the inside of it, right? So coming back to Sharon's question, okay, that says, what's the best way to figure out if your business makes sense? If it's has a good likelihood of succeeding, or a reasonable likelihood of succeeding, okay? The number one thing you can do is you can be on the inside of it in some way, okay? Now, the obvious way to do this is if you had a day job in something related to the business you wanted to do a side hustle or, you know, a startup in, something like that. That's the obvious thing. If not, try to get on the inside of it. Try to set up informational interviews, go to networking events, go to industry events, do something so that you could get on the inside of it. Go down to a construction site, talk to the foreman. You know, they don't know who you are. You could let them think that you're someone who's in the market for buying a house or something, and then, you know, like not say anything to lie about it, but, you know, just ask them a few questions and stuff, and be super friendly and see what you can learn. You know, that's how you start learning, by interacting with people and trying to get on the inside of the business. Once you get on the inside, now you've got a lot of people that you can hit up for information. Okay. Number one, that's the first thing. Number two, you can ask people to give you tours, to take you sort of backstage for that industry and see what's going on. You know, this kind of thing. There's all kinds of ways to tap that. For example, in the construction business, like we were talking about, I mean, I know they have some kind of affiliate relationship with schools that train people in skilled trades to be carpenters and plumbers and pipe fitters and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ways into that, right? Maybe there's even an educational route that goes into that industry. You could like sign up for a program or something. I mean, if you're serious about having your own business in that industry, stuff like this is not that far-fetched. It's a great way to learn. It's a great way to meet all the people on the inside. And once you're on the inside of something, then you have a real window into what is likely to work and what is not likely to work. And if you want to test an original idea, it's far easier. You have access to the customers, you have access to the experts, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully that makes sense. That's kind of what would be my take on that. But that's a very intelligent question, Sharon. It's great to see people asking stuff like this. There's a lot of people that don't even ask this kind of thing, or even it doesn't even occur to them before they just jump in and take out bank loans and get grants and then just blow the money on stupid crap. I'm going to get myself some office space, right? I have no product, but I've got office space. Like things like this. I'm going to pay someone to do a website for me. A month later, all the money's gone. You have a really buggy, bad website, and you're broke. And you have no product. So I've seen a lot of people do stuff like this, and so it's great that you're doing the intelligent thing and you're asking like, okay, I'm not jumping in thinking that it's guaranteed this is going to win and just assuming that. I'm a little bit paranoid that, it might not succeed. I'm always looking for the flaw in my thinking here. That's good. So there you go. That's kind of what I have to say. Now, if there aren't any questions, I didn't really have anything else planned out to say. Not that that was really that planned out. But if you do have any questions, get in the chat. If I get anything in the next minute or two, I'll be happy to help you if I can. If not, that's going to be pretty much a wrap for today. Yeah, a lot of people should be thinking about, what could go wrong. And when we're young, and trust me, I'm speaking from experience here, when we're young, we think we're invincible. We always look at the upside to everything. And don't get me wrong, that's great. It's great to be optimistic like that. It's great to take on the world and have big plans and stuff. And we need that attitude. We do need that attitude. We can't just be always fearing the worst and always cynical and, critical of everything. But there's a good balance in there. There has to be a balance. You have to sort of want to do bold things, want to strike out, see opportunities, and feel that it's reasonable for you to chase those opportunities. That's definitely a thing that makes sense and it's good. However, it also has to be tempered with some, some intelligence, just some sense of like, okay, I think I know it all, but I'd like to validate what I'm doing first. I'd like to sort of just get some evidence, some hard evidence that makes it hard to argue with that this is going to go the way I think it's going to go. Okay, let's just probe, the world a little to see if we can see evidence of that, right? Wow, how do you pronounce that? That's an interesting, your name there, your tag begins with an interesting letter that I don't recognize. Gluing, is that? Or slewing? Says, and then there's a $sign. How do you pronounce that? You don't pronounce it, you just do this, right? Okay. How should go about starting my credit journey? I'm on the fence about getting a credit card. I have a decent job. Okay, is that a startup related question? Not really. Well, I don't know. You're asking about credit cards. Sure, why not? I don't know. I mean, credit cards are like crack cocaine. For a lot of people, especially when you're young, it can be a bad thing. I would get a credit card. I would put the limit really low and I'd keep it there. Don't let them ramp it up on you. And I would make sure that you pay it back every month. If you can't pay it back at the end of the month, then something's wrong. Okay. Because the problem is, it feels like you now can buy anything. It feels like you're richer than you are. This is a trap that, you don't need me to tell you this. So many people fall into this. And a lot of people can't discipline themselves. So it becomes a real problem. And then because of all the interest and all that kind of stuff, and credit cards are one of the, for all the things that you could get money or you could borrow money from, credit cards are among the highest interest sources of cash, essentially. So that's where it becomes a real problem. And there's a reason why financial services institutions give these things out like candy, because they're trying to hook you. So if there's something legitimate you need it for, like you can't apply for a job, or I don't know, you can't apply for something important that you need without having a credit card number. You can't do business over the internet without a credit card number. Like, I don't know, there's something legitimate you need it for. Okay, that makes sense. But just remember, for a lot of people, you're playing with fire, especially if you're in your 20s. Okay, you're playing with fire here. If you haven't learned financial responsibility, this little piece of plastic in your hand can be your undoing. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay, don't go nuts, and don't let it change the way you think of yourself. You think you're richer and more affluent than you actually are, and then you go out and behave accordingly, and that's where the trouble begins, my friend. So just beware of that. Sharon says, enlighten me a lot. Don't start business that you don't really understand or don't know people who can help you. Well, yeah, listen, the thing is, if you start a business, okay, without spending any real money of yours on it, okay, that, in my opinion, is good, because you're not risking any money of yours. What you're risking is you're risking your time and effort resulting in failure. Okay. Now, you can argue and say, like, look, if you tried something and, it took a bit of work, but it failed. Okay. It makes you depressed. You feel bad about yourself. You maybe lose a little bit of confidence, but is it really so bad? Because number one, you learn, you have some hard experience. You now know this thing will not work for this reason. Okay. It might give you an idea of what alternative possibly could work. Okay. Now, if that's what you get out of the whole experience, is it a failure? That depends on your perspective. Okay. Usually people don't succeed by just trying something for the first time ever and then bam, it's a tremendous success. Usually there's a string of failures before, and the failures are learning experiences. By doing it, they try stuff and they learn along the way. And by the time they get to attempt number 5 or 6, they've got it figured out. They've done enough to really start to get wise of like, okay, I know this is not going to work, and I know that's not going to work for this reason, but this might work. So they succeed because of the string of failures they've had. Okay. So what can you conclude from this? You can conclude, number one, that repeated failures could possibly be a key to success. Okay. They're a learning experience. So even if you give up, you do 2 or 3 startup attempts or side hustle attempts, and nothing really took off, but you learned a lot. Maybe you could apply that to your life in the future. You could apply that to your career job. You could apply those lessons. They benefit you in other ways. Okay. But fear of failure shouldn't be too much of an issue if the only thing you're really losing is your time and effort. Now, if you took a bank loan for $150,000 and then tried something and it failed, obviously your time and effort and disappointment are not really the major concern here. What's hanging in the balance is you borrowed $150,000 that you're going to have to probably pay back in some way, shape, or form. That's the main concern, right? So, don't do that unless you really, really know what you're doing, right? Okay. But if you're not really risking any money, if you want to try something, go ahead. What's the risk? You risk disappointment and maybe your time being wasted. But even if it's a failure, you still learn something. So, I mean, to me, obviously, I encourage entrepreneurship type thinking, entrepreneurial thinking. I think it's a great thing. I would prefer, and I always have, preferred hiring employees that have entrepreneurial experience, okay? Because they know far more than people that have never, ever attempted that kind of activity in their lives, okay? So I think it's a great thing. Anyway, you've said some intelligent things today, Sharon. Thanks for being here. And also thanks for gluing, right? You can't hear it if I do this. Can you hear that? Anyway, that's pretty much it for today. Thank you. Thanks everybody for God. I'm usually a little bit better of a speaker than this, but thank you for being here on Side Hustle Ideas. You guys are awesome. If you want to learn business, if you're really wanting to learn actual business, not pseudoscience business that they have in coffee table books and you see posted on LinkedIn posts in groups and, things like this. You want to learn actual business, the stuff they teach in universities, and they have taught in universities for many, many years and will continue to do so for many, many more years. Okay. If you're interested in that, but you don't want to go back to school, you don't want to spend thousands of dollars, consider checking out that course. I created it primarily for people who are interested in entrepreneurship. Okay. You want to learn business. This is a self-study course. There's a link in the description. Check it out. It's a great solution for some people. It fits their particular situation. It's great bang for the buck. Follow the link. I've done a video on answering all kinds of questions about it. But that's what I'll say there. I see we got a couple of, we got one, I'll answer this one question really quick and then I got a jet. Alfred says, how'd recruit employees when starting a startup, such as which one is more appropriate, generalist or specialist, juniors? Well, when you're doing a startup, you don't really care too much about titles. What you care about is skill sets. And I mean, there's so many different ways you could bring somebody onto your team, like the reasoning behind why them. Some people hire their friends. Some people hire people that have the same belief, like that, you could succeed with this type of thing. Some people are passionate about the same things, not about their skills or experience, more about their passion. They're just really committed. Okay, so that part they have down. Other than that, it's usually about your accomplishments. So if you've done a certain thing, you want to hire a developer, and then somebody is saying, hello, I could join your startup, I'm a developer. And you say, well, what have you done? And they say, well, I've created an app from scratch. Here it is. And you go, oh, okay, because I'm looking for someone to help create the app for the service that I'm providing. Okay, I've created the service. I need a developer to create the app for it, so it's available electronically. You seem to have those skills, and I see that you've done precisely that before. So, okay. They also have to be open to a startup type mentality. If they want to be paid by the hour, just like you would in a regular day job, maybe that's not the right thing. So it's such a huge topic. I can't really answer that in like a minute, but hopefully that gives you something. Anyway, thanks for being here, Alfred, and for Mr. Friendly. You guys are awesome. I will see you next week at the same time or a little bit earlier than what I started today, and for another episode of Side Hustle Ideas. Thanks, guys. Take care.